Welcome to the fourth episode of our Planet Zoo 2 feature week. Today we're talking about the stars of the Planet Zoo game, and that is the animals. We are going to talk a lot about these, so let's jump into it. Alright, so before we talk about this super ethical setup you can see over here, we quickly have to do a bit of a rewind. What have we done this week to give you the context? We've already had 3 episodes. In case you haven't seen them, please make sure to do so because you need them for context. We've talked about potential new features in Planet Zoo 2. Then we talked about the habitat design, which is super important, specifically that episode for today's episode. And yesterday we talked about overhauls from the other Planet games or the other Frontier games, I shall say. Today we speak about the animals themselves, and we have a couple of things to talk about. Let's first of all address the elephant, or in this kind of way, the elephant fish in the room, I should say. Well, basically we need to have aquatics and we need to have birds. I am not going to go too much deeper into this area, simply because I think it is super obvious. It has been talked about so often. I'm not going to bother you anymore. I don't have anything to add to it what hasn't been said already, so let's just skip that for the moment and talk about more important things, at least in my opinion. Alright, the first very quick point is exhibits, or to be more precise, small exhibits and walkthrough exhibits. I would love a complete overhaul. I do think they're useless. I don't think they're any way adding too much to the game. And I do think that specifically the walkthrough exhibit have been a late game call to at least try to improve something that they couldn't deliver on a greater screen because A, they were potentially planning already to go for Planet Zoo 2, or B, the engine just didn't allow them to, do anything without changing the core game too much. That said, I like the attempt. It's, again, it just didn't really cut it for me. And personally also with these small exhibits, I kind of understand why they did this in the past, but come on, it's 2026 and I don't want to have this restraint to just have one specific size of an exhibit for some sort of animal, just like, the boa in here, for example. It's merely an animatronic, and to be honest, it just could work like a prop. An animated prop would have done, to be completely honest, even better. I think an animated prop that people would look at would have more impact to create nice looking exhibits in comparison to what we have over here. So yeah, there are a million ways of doing it. I don't want to dive too deep into this because I may do a specific video about exhibits only in the future. It hasn't made it into this series this week because I didn't think it's important enough, but I want to see if I can make it in the future. If you've got great ideas how to pull off exhibits, and maybe you can already say Prehistoric Kingdom did a good job in these, we could look at that one too. But yeah, just saying, these things do not cut it for me. I hope they will be reworked, and specifically all the animals we've seen so far in the walkthrough exhibit, I hope that they will make it to become habitat exhibits animals, or habitat animals anyways, so that there is no need for a walkthrough exhibit anymore. I do understand certain decisions, for example the sloth, that it doesn't really move that much, but hey, come on, koalas are not that much different, are they? So there are reasons. Anyways, let's move on to the next one. The next one is fur shader. So specifically in here we have got the gorilla, and there is the orangutan coming just perfectly fine to join the club. Now, these animals in the game, they are fantastic, Planet Zoo has done a completely great job in creating animals. Well, glitches are still a thing, but like in terms of the looks of them, they look absolutely stellar. The models are great, and with a couple of lighting improvements and hopefully fur improvements, that will work. It's super cool to see these two animals next to each other because it exactly shows the problem the fur shader has right now. We do have a gorilla and we have an orangutan. Both animals share the same kind of fur shader, and you can see they look pretty similar other than just having some color adjustments. But as we know from real life, they do not look similar at all. So orangutans are a lot more fuzzy, a lot more longer fur hanging down, especially when they're wet or so, they look like very interesting, with that like almost look coat-like fur hanging down, while gorillas do have a lot more shorter fur, just as is in here. This fur shader does specifically work pretty well on shorter haired animals. That works super well, but especially on longer haired animals, or with like hair length variations, the fur shader really comes to, you know, its limitations. And I really would love to see this improved, because that would actually be a thing that you can translate to a lot more animals in the game, whether it's going to be the big cats or some other animals as well, just as the monkeys and so on. There's a lot of animals that would benefit quite a lot from an improved fur shader, and some of the modders have already shown how you could do this. We're still working around some limitations they had, but still they did a good job in making these things work. So yeah, I'm really hoping that Frontier is going to improve, especially on that region, because that is something that can receive the biggest overhaul in the looks of the animals. The real models of the animals, I don't think there's much room for improvement, especially because they have already been very high quality and high poly, so they would benefit only from lighting and fur and shader updates. So that being said, we can already move on to the next thing. For my next point, I have actually sped up the game, because this is 2 points in one. So the first point over here is the behavior of groups. This is a thing people have wished for quite a lot, and the game called Jurassic World Evolution does at least feature it a little bit, while this game over here does not. This is herding. Herding is a thing that means animals of a group, of a social group, most likely behave as a group. They move together, they herd together, and in this habitat over here, it sometimes seems as if there's herding in the game. There has also been a rumor in between these, or during all these years, that there is a certain group behavior in the game, but honestly, if you scale up the habitat, make it bigger, you will notice there's nothing. It's just like really random. There is some social interactions between tiny ones and babies, and you know, juveniles and elderlies, so that is making them obviously come together eventually, but it's not really that they are in a group. So that is number one. Number two is it's not a complaint. It is definitely a wish for the future that accounts for the time we are living in. So I would love to see a much higher number of animation variation. What do I mean by that? I mean, specifically what you can see if you look at these two zebras over here, or that third one over there. I mean, they're eating now, so that's unfair, but obviously there is a repetitive pattern of animations in this game, which makes sense because you can only create so many. And Planet Zoo has been very proud of their system that most of the animals share the same base skeleton, so all kind of horse-like creatures, I should say, or like everyone who's having a pair of 4 legs and hooves, they are sharing the same main skeleton, which has a set of animations, just like walking, idling, whatever. And then they can just, you know, kind of take this base skeleton animation and easily translate that to the next animal, or just, you know, copy paste it over, and they just have to make tiny adjustments to make that fit to the specific animal, which obviously has been a super good innovation to scale up the game on a larger scale, but it also makes things look super repetitive after years of playing the game, obviously, because you start to notice them all doing the same animations on repetition, and it becomes even worse if animals do the exact same animation at the same time in the same habitat, which makes them look like really weird looking animals. You could argue that this is accounting for a weird behavior of zoo animals, which sometimes happens if animals kept in zoos not having sizable enough habitats and not enough kind of enrichment. They start to move very much in always the same repetitive patterns, which is always a sign for stress, you know, but that's not the thing in the game. It's just a problem of a too kind of little amount of animations. And again, this is by any means kind of a complaint or negative about Planet Zoo, you know, going almost 10 years ago when they have potentially worked on this game in the first place. The capability of machines and computers and stuff wasn't that great. Maybe the help of machine learning and so on wasn't that good. So nowadays, I really would see them having the option to throw in, let's say, 3, 4, 5 times the amount of animations, because hopefully, I mean, they do hand animate these things, but if this is not a complete rework, they can at least use all the animation sets from the first game and copy them to the second game, maybe adjust a few things here and there, and hopefully add a crazy amount of animations and hopefully better transitions between the different animation sets to make it even more variable, because if you do it more variable and more randomized, that would also help, you know. At the moment, the game always has a certain let's say preferred pattern of how animations are kind of connected to each other, which again creates a bit more of a higher likely appearance of repetitiveness. And if there's a bigger randomization in there because more animations can go together, this again would help to make these animals feel more and more natural. Okay, so I took a bit more time to explain what I mean with this specific point, because I feel like this is one of the major things for me personally, how to improve the animals' appearance in the game, and also how you could make them more believable in the way of how they behave in their habitats, how they move in a group, as a group, and also how they move and behave in comparison or in relation to each other, as I said. And this is something you could see easily on screen right now, how repetitive it is becoming to look after a while, and there's no uniqueness in it. So you can see now on the left hand side, you've just seen how all 4 zebras did exactly the same, in the same speed, in the same pattern, in the same way, transition exactly into the same animation set afterwards. So these kind of things, you know, your eye just notice. I do hope that they kind of work around that for the next game to improve that. Let's move over to this habitat for my last points. Now, number 1 is an improvement of traversable area. You saw that coming, didn't you? What do I mean by that? Well, let's actually use the tiger over here and showcase what I mean. So, for those of you who don't know, the traversable area in this game is basically this blue area you can see right in the middle here. This is where our tiger can move. If we were to select this monkey over here, Curson, we can see Curson can move a little bit in a different way because they can climb. You know, if you use, for example, this one over here, you can see the tree is becoming a little bit of an area too. Now, this is what the traversable area is for. However, this game has a really ridiculous way of doing it. Let's just take this boulder, for example, and plop this down a couple more times, like so. And so, and so. Even let's leave some more space in between. Oh yeah, all right. So let's just move that little thing a tiny bit more and just select our tiger again. And now what you can see, the white area shows where the tiger cannot move. Now let's move the tiger over here. And the tiger now needs to go all the way around to come back, as you can see. It needs to go all the way here, which is ridiculous, because if you compare the size of the tiger, it could easily walk through here. Like, there's no way why it couldn't go through this gap over here. The reason why is because the way this game calculates this animal is basically, it is taking, and let me see if I can kind of showcase this with one of the spheres. Is it the right size? I'm not sure if it is. Oh, actually, it's not really too far off. No, this is perfect. This is actually the perfect thing. The game calculates from the origin of the animal into all directions. This is literally the sphere that would checkmark where the tiger can go, because at any given point, the tiger needs to do any given animation. As we talked about in the previous part of today's video, there is a set of animation that animals do calculate with. So either they rotate on its point, or they jump, or they move, or they sleep, or whatnot. At any given point, the game calculates as if the animal needs to do all its animations, which kind of is logical in a way, because it needs to move itself out of any given situation. But with this thing said, you can see why it doesn't fit through here. And it also doesn't fit through here, as you can see. Same here. So it's kind of tight over here. And that one almost fits, as you can see, but it still doesn't. And so it needs to go all the way around here to make its way through. So if we were to click now on some of the little monkeys, for example, that little chimpanzee, you can see they, well, if the game would update this right now, hold on, let's say traversal area. Okay, the game doesn't want to allow me to showcase to you this. Let's just use that one. Okay, I'm not sure why the game is not telling me the traversable area for these animals. That's a bit of an odd one right now. Let's have a look. There you go. Now it shows it. These can walk through because they are essentially smaller, and from their origin, obviously, the invisible sphere around this animal is smaller. However, specifically with the tiger, I would love to see a big change. I would love to be able to have a change of the system so that the game, for example, could say, okay, in order to pass through somewhere, at least animation types A, B, and C need to be able to kind of work. And this is walk forward, walk backward, and run, for example. Because if that would be the case, the orientation of the animal would be the same. And just to follow the example we just talked about, then your checkbox doesn't need to be a sphere, because the game says, okay, you know what? I've got an area before and after this transitional area that both offer me the space to do whatever given animation I need to do, and I just need this space to traverse from A to B. And if we were to use this one, I mean, it's almost perfect, it's fine, let's use that one. This one could mimic what you need to walk, and all of a sudden they would need less space to traverse through here. And the only thing that the game would, in my mind at least, then needs to fulfill this requirement is to just say, okay, you know what, there is an area here and here connected to this area, and this is the important bit. If that's the case, if this is true, then allow the animal to pass through here, but it would always walk through here. You know what would be beautiful about this? This wouldn't only be a change to make traversable area better in a way and more realistic, it would also give us more creative power to force animals to, and in a positive way, I mean that, to use the habitat as designed. So for example, if you've got a tiger trail, which kind of often happens in zoos, where you've got a trail moving from a higher up area to a lower up area, and you have that go down in some serpentines, for example, you could design it in a way that the animal needs to just walk the serpentines fully before doing anything else to the ground. Now it's kind of, you need to create this area big enough so that so often it happens that a animal, for example, starts to walk on that little trail you build, but because of any kind of weird things, all of a sudden they are hungry or they're thirsty or whatever comes to their mind, they start doing weird actions on that trail, turning around, going back, then turning around, going forward. That looks odd, looks super weird. So with having, let's say, a mix of full accessible areas and traversable areas, and now finally the name would make sense, it's only an area to traverse from A to B, then we would finally have a certain power to design habitats also in terms of where animals can walk, jump, exist, if you will. So that was one of my biggest points, and this is the yeah, this is just a traversable area, and the how do I actually call this for my list over here? Let me just double check my list. Oh, I called this the traversable need adjustment. Well, that's just how I call this. Anyways, let's move on to a very tiny point that is very quickly done, so let's do this. So this is a juvenile chimpanzee, and it is kind of tiny. It's not a baby anymore, but it is a juvenile, and the next step this little thing is going to enjoy is becoming a full adult. I would love to see a step in between, kind of a teenager, if you will. So we've got small juveniles and mid-sized juveniles, and then we've got elderly, or not elderly, adults, let's say. I don't need a fully kind of dynamic growth as it is, for example, in Prehistoric Kingdom. I love the idea, it's great, but honestly, I don't need it necessarily. But in order to see a bit more of the life stage of my animals, I definitely would love to see a middle age in a way added to the roster. So from juvenile to teenager to adult, that would be superb to just add one more layer, and also a bit more of a different need maybe for animals, and these teenagers could create a bit more fuzz and a challenge, you know, to keep them away. That would be fun. So yeah, that's that. Let's move on to the next one, which equals to the last one for today's video, and this is, I called this on my list, Delivery of Promise. Now, it's a very philosophical one, but it's not really that dramatic. Planet Zoo 1, when it was announced and it was advertised at the beginning, they were talking so much about the most realistic animals, the most dynamic way of how animals live in their habitats. And in relation to other zoo games, this may be true, but not in relation what they said at the beginning. So there was like, I remember the very first time I saw Planet Zoo at the offices from Frontier. I don't know when exactly that was, somewhere in the summer 2019. That was when 2019, that's a funny number. That was when they showed us that kind of safari level, and they were talking about like, yeah, when it's raining, animals will search for shelter, and the hotter it is, they will go for shade, and when it's hot, they will also search for some ponds to lay themselves into, and you know, they would go in herds, and that was like all the promise of how animals would behave with their environment. And I'm guessing because of performance, maybe they needed to strip this down a little, because certainly these things don't work, you know. Animals are not actively going for shelter when it's raining. Animals are not going actively for shade to reduce their heat. They don't even go actively for cooler areas in their habitat if you have some coolers somewhere. So you just need to spam coolers everywhere because your animals will be too stupid to find necessarily the area where it's cool enough for them. So I definitely want to see this updated. Like, for example, this tiger over here, realistically, and I don't know if it's hot or not in here, it's kind of a glass house, so it would be majorly hot, but this tiger would definitely need to be in the shadow over here. That's where they would put themselves realistically, you know. And for example, if you would put on rain, I mean, it doesn't make any sense for me right now, but let's just do this for the showcase. I'm just gonna move this thing away, and then we're going to turn it into rain real quick so you can see what I mean by that. Realistically, these animals now would need to search for shelter and seek for somewhere to... How the hell? Somewhere to, you know, go. And most likely they would now all need to go and just quickly move under this tree to be secured from the rain, you know. But they just couldn't care less, you know. They just keep on going. The tiger's like, oh, whatever, you know. No one is going to actively search for shelter. They don't even mind if you click on them. I mean, this one is starving though. They can't because I disabled this. They don't like they don't even have anything in here like, oh, I need to go and search for shelter. They even do like, look at that. It's just like, oh yeah, let's rub myself a little bit against that little petty here. Nothing changes. It's a bit of a pity. I would have loved to see this, but it's just not actively in the game. I even put some things down to test this, but they don't. So yeah, it's a bit of a pity, as I said. So I would love to see this finally happen in Planet Zoo 2. And there are a couple of other things they have talked about. I would also love to see that maybe different types of ground is hotter or less hot for the animals. So for example, stones realistically in hot areas become super hot, and some animals even love that. They actively go there to lie themselves down on these hot stones, but others obviously hate that, so they would go into cooler areas and into the shade to avoid these hot areas. Specifically animals like tigers and so on with their paws that are kind of sensitive. They wouldn't go on these hot grounds anyways to not hurt themselves. So these kind of things would be lovely to see. But first of all, deliver on the promise you've made for the first game before going into some advancements. Anyhow, that's it. Let's go for a quick conclusion. Oh boy, animals. They're the star of the show, obviously. But I have to just repeat myself. I think the animals in Planet Zoo have already been amongst the best animals we've seen in any game. They have stellar models for the most part. They have incredibly well designed and hand animated animations. They have wonderful fur variants. They updated that during the lifetime of Planet Zoo 1, obviously, which is great. There's a lot really of great things that you can say about the animals in Planet Zoo. However, they're not perfect, you know. We have to strive for improvement, and my improvements lay really in the details, just like making them more believable by updating fur shaders, but also updating the herding mechanics, the way how they behave in their habitats, the traversal area to be improved so that they can maneuver their habitats much more better, and increase the amount of variations in the animations to make these animals feel less repetitive and less copy-paste, and make them really feel more unique and individual. By the way, this is one point I should have added to the deliver on promise, because they also said every single animal is unique and you will be able to tell which animal is which by their behavior in the habitat, which is a bold statement to begin with, to be honest, in a game like that. And they did not deliver on this promise. Let's face it. You could technically, if you were to just look at your habitat closely enough, and you would have one animal which looks kind of iconic and does always the same repetitive pattern in your habitat. This can occasionally happen, but it's not like that you really can tell by its individual traits that there's, like, let's say one zebra, for example, that is always going to be in the bottom left corner and laughing at your stuff, and there's another one that is always chilling by the food because it's always super hungry. Or let's say for the monkeys, or like the gorillas, there's only one gorilla who's always chilling in the same hammock. That's just not part of the game. I would love to see it, obviously, but it's not. So yeah, there's a lot to improve. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree with those things. And now it is important to make the segue for what I think is going to be the best episode of this week. Episode number 5 tomorrow is going to talk about the management. I will say it as it is. I think the management area is the biggest area when it comes to where you can improve the most. When I say the animals have already been pretty good, they have maybe already been at level, let's say 8 from 10, you know, management is merely a 5 from 10, I guess. So there's a huge amount of space to improve upon, and I want to really give an idea on how to deliver on that one to become a 9 out of 10, maybe even. That would be absolutely fantastic. It would be unheard of for Frontier. So let's focus on the next episode. It's going to be great. If you want to follow along, make sure to sub to the channel if you haven't already. If you like these videos, which really, they may not look like this, but they do require quite a lot of preparations. They are a lot of work, and I want to hopefully you guys have a good time watching these. So if you want to support the channel, you can either become a member for just €1. That's really easy and supports me directly. Or you can purchase a game via my instant gaming link. You don't even need a game. You can also grab a DLC, pre-order something, or just get some Steam money if you want to for a discount. That is always helping me out the most. Thanks for that little advertising space at the end of the video. I would love to see you tomorrow again. Until then, have a good time, and don't forget to give me feedback what you think needs to be improved for animals in Planet Zoo 2. See you tomorrow.